Commander Nax'Vrell gazed through the observation deck's massive viewport, his four eyes narrowing as he studied the small blue-green planet displayed on the tactical holoscreen. His scaled skin glistened under the ship's ambient lighting, reflecting purplish hues across the polished command console. "Another species that believes itself to be special," he said, mandibles clicking in what passed for a Tarraxian laugh. "How many does this make now, Sub-Commander Lazkrath? 12? 13? 15 successful conquests, Commander," replied his second-in-command, voice rippling with practiced precision. "The Arcosians fell just last solar cycle." Nax'Vrell nodded, satisfaction evident in the slow undulation of his cranial spines. "Ah yes, the Arcosians. Took us what, 3 abductions before their government collapsed?" 2, Commander. Their High Chancellor and Defense Minister. Once removed, their military fractured within days. The Tarraxian Dominion strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Why waste resources on full-scale invasions when strategic abductions worked so much better? Take the right individuals and watch societies crumble from within. The strong survived. The weak perished. Those abandoned by their own kind rarely lasted long in Tarraxian holding cells. Logical beings understand when to cut losses, Nax'Vrell mused, scrolling through intelligence reports on this new species. Humans. Such a plain name for our next conquest. Around him, the command deck hummed with activity as his crew prepared for their approach to the Saturn research outpost. It was perfect, isolated, strategically valuable, yet small enough to test these humans' resolve. Their psychological profile indicates strong emotional attachments, noted intelligence officer Vexnar, her slender digits tapping rapidly across her datapad. Potentially exploitable. Nax'Vrell waved a dismissive hand. All species claim loyalty until tested. The Jervians swore they'd never surrender their leaders. 3 solar cycles later, they offered 5 more just to stop our orbital bombardment. "But Commander," interjected Communication Officer Trilzar, the youngest on the command deck, "preliminary data suggests humans have unusual claims of exceptional bonds." "Yes," Nax'Vrell cut him off. "Just like all the others. Spare me the details, officer. I've heard it before." The massive battlecruiser Inevitable Dominance slid silently into position behind Saturn's largest moon, cloaking systems engaged. Nax'Vrell felt the familiar pre-conquest excitement ripple through his thoracic cavity. 15 successful species subjugated, with humans soon to be the 16th. "Prepare the extraction teams," he ordered, rising to his full height. "Target their leadership and technical personnel. Let's see how quickly these humans abandon their own." Little did Commander Nax'Vrell know, he was about to learn a lesson about humanity that would shake the very foundations of Tarraxian conquest philosophy. The Saturn research outpost hung in space like a gleaming spiderweb, solar arrays stretching outward from its central hub. Relatively new in human space exploration terms, the station housed 37 researchers studying Saturn's atmospheric anomalies. For the Tarraxians, it might as well have been gift-wrapped. "Approach vector plotted, Commander," announced Navigation Officer Zintar. "Their sensor grid has the expected blind spots. Primitive technology, really." Nax'Vrell chittered in amusement. "Deploy stealth shuttles. I want their key personnel identified and extracted within 1 planetary rotation. Minimal casualties. We're not barbarians, after all." 3 sleek, obsidian shuttles detached from the Inevitable Dominance, their advanced propulsion systems leaving no heat signature as they glided toward the unsuspecting station. Chief Engineer Eliza Frost ran her diagnostic scanner along the junction box, whistling a tune that annoyed her assistant to no end. "Must you always whistle while working?" groaned Marcus Blackwood, handing her a calibration tool. "Must you always complain about my whistling?" Eliza shot back with a grin. "Besides, keeps me focused. Hand me the plasma cutter, would you?" The tall, dark-skinned engineer sighed dramatically but complied. At 36, Eliza had earned her reputation as one of Earth Space Command's most brilliant engineering minds, which had landed her this plum assignment overseeing Saturn Outpost's revolutionary gravity stabilization systems. Dr. Kessler says we're getting that supply ship next week, Marcus mentioned. Maybe they'll bring real coffee this time instead of that synthesized garbage. Eliza snorted. Dream on. I've been in deep space stations for 8 years, and I've yet to. The lights flickered, then went completely dark. What the hell? Marcus fumbled for his emergency light. Eliza's hand went immediately to her communicator. Frost to command. We've got power fluctuations in Section 7. Anyone copy? Static answered her. That's not a simple power failure, she muttered, grabbing her toolkit. Emergency systems should have kicked in by now. A strange hissing sound came from the ventilation shaft above them, followed by a metallic thunk as something heavy landed on the deck plating. What was Marcus began, before his words dissolved into a strangled gasp. Eliza spun around, plasma cutter raised defensively, but froze at the sight before her. 3 tall, insectoid figures stood in the corridor, their 4 eyes glowing an eerie yellow in the darkness. One had a 3-fingered hand wrapped around Marcus's throat. What the hell are you? She demanded, backing away slowly. The creatures didn't answer. Instead, one raised a device that emitted a high-pitched whine. Eliza felt her muscles lock in place as a paralysis field enveloped her. She couldn't move, couldn't scream, could only watch as they efficiently secured Marcus and their third colleague, Dr. Hannah Rivera, who must have been caught entering the section. The last thing Eliza saw before losing consciousness was a strange symbol on their armor, something like a spiral galaxy being crushed by a clawed hand. Extraction complete, Commander, reported Security Chief Drac Moore as the shuttles redocked with the mothership. The 3 high-value targets acquired with minimal resistance, their Chief Engineer and 2 technical specialists. Nax'Vrell's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. Casualties? None, Commander. We deployed paralytic gas through their ventilation systems and neutralized their communications as planned. The remaining crew is unharmed but completely cut off from outside contact. Excellent. And what have our new guests revealed under initial questioning? Intelligence Officer Vex Nar stepped forward. The female designated Eliza Frost appears to be their chief engineer. She oversees critical stabilization systems. The other 2 are her direct subordinates. Removing them has effectively crippled the station's maintenance capacity. Perfect. Nax'Vrell settled into his command chair. Now we watch Phase 2 unfold. Prepare the message for their Earth command. Make it appropriately threatening, but professional. We are conquerors, not savages. The communication screen flickered to life as Nax'Vrell dictated his terms. Return of the abductees in exchange for humanity's unconditional surrender and integration into the Dominion. Standard procedure. He'd delivered similar ultimatums 15 times before. Send it on all frequencies, he ordered. Let's see how quickly they abandon their people and beg for terms. Trilzar hesitated before transmitting. Commander, their historical data suggests humans might react unpredictably. Nax'Vrell waved away the concern. They all think they're special, officer. They all surrender in the end. Transmit the message. The ultimatum launched toward Earth, and Commander Nax'Vrell settled in to await humanity's inevitable capitulation. 15 species before them had learned the harsh lesson of Tarraxian superiority. Humans would be no different. Or so he thought. 6 hours passed before the response came. Commander Nax'Vrell had been reviewing Conquest protocols when Communication Officer Trilzar's voice cut through the command deck's ambient hum. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Nax'Vrell straightened in his chair, arranging his features into the stern expression that had intimidated countless species. On screen. Let's hear their surrender terms. The view screen flickered, revealing a stern-faced human female with short silver hair and a uniform adorned with numerous insignia. Her eyes, Nax'Vrell noted with curiosity, showed no trace of fear. "This is Admiral Helena Reeves of Earth Space Command. We have received your communication regarding our personnel. Our response is simple: we're coming for our people. All of them. Prepare accordingly." The transmission cut off abruptly. For 3 full seconds, silence reigned on the command deck. Then Nax'Vrell burst into a series of clicking sounds that approximated Tarraxian laughter. "That's it? No pleas for mercy? No negotiation?" He swiveled toward his officers. This is new, at least. Usually they beg first. Sub-Commander Lozkrath's upper mandibles twitched uncomfortably. Perhaps they misunderstood our terms. "No," Nax'Vrell said, still amused. "They're posturing, trying to save face before the inevitable surrender. The Jervians did something similar, threatened a full-scale assault. 2 solar cycles later, they were signing integration treaties." Trilzar cleared his throat, a nervous habit he'd never managed to overcome. "Commander, if I may, I've been analyzing human historical archives, and there's something unusual about there." "Let me guess," Nax'Vrell interrupted, mandibles clicking impatiently. "Their unbreakable spirit? Their refusal to surrender? Save it, officer. We've heard the same from 15 species. All currently serve the Dominion." "But Commander," Trilzar persisted, unusual for a junior officer, "humans have a documented history of committing disproportionate resources to rescue operations, far beyond rational cost-benefit analysis." Intelligence Officer Vexnar interjected, "He's not wrong, Commander. Their historical archives show multiple instances where they've launched large-scale operations to recover even single individuals." Nax'Vrell waved a dismissive hand. "Propaganda, obviously. No species would waste strategic resources on non-essential personnel. It defies evolutionary logic." As if on cue, the tactical officer's console began emitting a series of urgent alerts. "Commander," called Tactical Officer Grenvac, voice tinged with surprise. "We're detecting multiple engine signatures from Earth's direction. Ships diverting from established routes and forming formation patterns." Nax'Vrell moved to the tactical display, eyes narrowing at the data. "How many vessels?" 7 no, 12 now. Wait, the officer's voice faltered. "Updates coming in from our long-range scanners. 23 ships and counting, all converging towards Saturn. Military and civilian vessels alike." "Impossible," muttered Nax'Vrell. "They wouldn't commit such forces for 3 insignificant individuals." Trilzar's voice was quiet but clear. "Their historical data suggested they would, Commander." Nax'Vrell shot the communication officer a warning glare. "Monitor the situation. They're bluffing, clearly. Probably empty vessels on automated courses, meant to intimidate us." But as he returned to his command chair, Nax'Vrell couldn't quite suppress the unfamiliar sensation creeping along his spine. Not fear, certainly not fear, but perhaps the first inkling that these humans might require more study than he'd initially thought. "Maintain position," he ordered, "and bring one of the humans for interrogation. Let's see what Chief Engineer Frost knows about this response." 3 days later, Commander Nax'Vrell paced the command deck, his normally composed demeanor showing subtle signs of strain. The skin around his 4 eyes had darkened from lack of sleep, and his normally immaculate uniform bore wrinkles uncharacteristic of a Tarraxian officer of his rank. "Tactical update," he barked, no longer bothering with the casual banter that typically preceded his orders. Tactical Officer Grenvac's voice wavered slightly. "Human fleet now numbers 67 vessels, Commander. Their formation suggests offensive capabilities well beyond what our intelligence indicated." 67 ships, Nax'Vrell repeated, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. "For 3 engineers." 68 now, corrected Grenvac. Another destroyer just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. Security Chief Drakmor stepped forward, data pad in hand. A scarred veteran of 12 conquests, Drakmor rarely spoke unless he had something valuable to contribute. "Commander, I've been analyzing human combat tactics from their historical records," he said, his deep voice rumbling across the command deck. "They're concerning." "Concerning how, exactly?" Nax'Vrell demanded. Drakmor displayed a holographic rendering of previous human conflicts. "Humans don't fight like the other species we've encountered. They're inefficient, unpredictable. They value individual soldiers to a degree that should be tactically unsound, yet somehow—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Somehow it strengthens them." "Explain," Nax'Vrell ordered, his full attention now focused on the security chief. "In most documented conflicts, tactically superior forces have been defeated by humans because they underestimated human determination to recover their own." Drakmor scrolled through several examples. "They have a saying, 'No one left behind.' It appears to be more than rhetoric." Nax'Vrell snorted derisively. "You're suggesting they're actually mobilizing this entire fleet for 3 insignificant engineers?" "That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Commander," Drakmor replied evenly. "And based on their deployment patterns, they're deadly serious." Before Nax'Vrell could respond, alarms blared across the command deck. "Multiple small craft detected," shouted Grenvac. "Human scout ships, approaching from Vector 227.3. "How did they get so close without detection?" demanded Nax'Vrell, rushing to the tactical display. "Unknown, Commander. They appear to be using some kind of modified stealth technology not in our database. Raise shields. Deploy interceptors." The inevitable dominance hummed as its defensive systems engaged. 4 Tarraxian interceptors launched smoothly from the battlecruiser's ventral bays, sleek predators ready to dispatch the annoying human scouts. What happened next would be discussed in Tarraxian military academies for generations. Rather than fleeing, the human scout ships accelerated directly toward the interceptors. Their smaller size and seemingly inferior weaponry should have made it a quick, one-sided engagement. Instead, the scouts executed a series of maneuvers that defied conventional space combat logic, splitting apart at the last moment to confuse targeting systems and then regrouping in patterns that maximized their combined firepower. 2 Tarraxian interceptors exploded in brilliant flashes. A third spun out of control, its propulsion systems crippled. Only one managed to limp back to the inevitable dominance, its hull scored with laser burns. "Impossible," whispered Sub-Commander Loskrath as the bridge crew watched in stunned silence. The human scouts, having made their point, retreated back to their fleet's perimeter. "They're testing our defenses," Drakmor said grimly, "and sending a message." Nax'Vrell fought to maintain his composure. "One lucky engagement doesn't change anything." "With respect, Commander," Drakmor persisted, "this wasn't luck. Their ships executed coordinated tactics we've never encountered before. They sacrificed potential advantages to protect each other, even when tactically unsound." Trilzar spoke up from his communication station, his voice tight with anxiety. "Commander, we're receiving reports from the detention level. The human prisoners are laughing." "Laughing? Why would they be laughing?" Nax'Vrell demanded. When told about the scout engagement, Chief Engineer Frost said, and I quote, "That's just the appetizer, bug boy. Wait till you see the main course." A heavy silence fell over the command deck. "This is unprecedented," admitted Intelligence Officer Vexnar, her analytical mind struggling to process this deviation from established patterns. 15 species, and none have mounted a rescue operation of this scale. It defies rational analysis. Throughout the command deck, Tarraxian officers exchanged uneasy glances. Their species prided itself on logical conquest strategies built on the predictable behavior of inferior species. These humans were following no known pattern. Perhaps, suggested Lozcrath carefully, we should consider releasing the human engineers as a gesture of. Absolutely not, snapped Nax'Vrell. The Tarraxian Dominion does not retreat. We do not negotiate, we conquer. He straightened his uniform, visibly composing himself. Prepare the main battle systems. If these humans want to sacrifice their fleet for 3 irrelevant engineers, we will teach them the price of such irrationality. But even as he gave the orders, Nax'Vrell couldn't shake the growing suspicion that the Tarraxians might, for the first time in their conquest history, have severely miscalculated. Contact. Multiple vectors, they're coming in hot. The tactical officer's voice cut through the command deck's tense atmosphere as display screens flashed crimson with incoming threats. The human fleet had split into 3 distinct attack groups, approaching the inevitable dominance from positions that conventional military doctrine would have deemed strategically unsound. Commander Nax'Vrell had barely finished barking defensive orders when the first volley hit. The battlecruiser shuddered violently as energy shields flared and strained against the concentrated firepower. Status report, he demanded, gripping his command chair as the deck plates vibrated beneath his feet. Shields at 78% and holding, reported Engineering Officer Mev Lack. But they're targeting unusual points in our defense grid. Not standard weak points, but seemingly random sections. Security Chief Drac Moore studied the tactical display, his scarred face illuminated by the flashing battle indicators. But not random. They're probing. Looking for something specific. His eyes widened with sudden understanding. They're mapping shield modulation patterns. Reconfigure defensive harmonics immediately. The order came moments too late. 3 human destroyers executed a maneuver that no Tarraxian battle simulator would have predicted, accelerating directly toward the inevitable dominance in what appeared to be a suicide run, only to veer off at the last possible second. Releasing a barrage of specialized torpedoes that phase-shifted through the momentary gaps in the Tarraxian shields. Explosions rocked the mighty warship. Detention-level breach. They've targeted the exact section holding their engineers, shouted Gren Vac in disbelief. On the main view screen, a new transmission cut through the chaos. A dark-skinned human female appeared, her uniform bearing the insignia of Fleet Admiral. Her expression was not one of rage or hatred, but of calm, calculated determination. This is Fleet Admiral Admiral Jackson of the Earth Defense Force. Your shields have been compromised. You are currently surrounded by 43 ships with weapons locked on your critical systems. Return our people, and you may leave this system intact. Nax'Vrell hissed in fury. You sacrificed your ships and personnel for 3 engineers? What kind of strategic madness is this? Admiral Jackson's expression didn't change. Those 3 engineers have names: Eliza Frost, Marcus Blackwood, Hannah Rivera. They are our people. We don't abandon our own. You have 5 minutes to release them, or we continue. The transmission cut off. They've penetrated our forward defenses, reported Drac Moore, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note respect. 2 human vessels sacrificed themselves to create the opening. The crew they ejected in escape pods, but they deliberately rammed their ships into our defensive line. A massive impact rocked the battlecruiser again. Another breach. Multiple human boarding craft detected attaching to Sector 7. Through the chaos of blaring alarms and shouted orders, Nax'Vrell watched the tactical display with growing horror. The human ships moved with unexpected coordination, each squadron seeming to understand their role in a complex battle choreography. When one vessel was damaged, others immediately moved to protect it, sacrificing tactical advantages to ensure their comrades could retreat safely. Most disturbing of all was their targeting pattern. Despite having weapons locked on critical systems, the humans were primarily focusing on creating a path to the detention level. They were sacrificing strategic opportunities to cripple the Tarraxian warship, focusing instead on their singular objective, retrieving their people. They fight as if each of their kind is irreplaceable, murmured Drakmor, watching a human cruiser take significant damage while covering the retreat of a smaller, damaged vessel. Even when it makes no tactical sense. Nax'Vrell could barely process what he was seeing. How do they maintain military effectiveness with such inefficient priorities? Drakmor's eyes remained fixed on the display, where human boarding parties were systematically fighting their way through the ship's corridors toward the detention level. I believe, Commander, that is precisely what makes them effective. They fight harder because they know they won't be abandoned. Another explosion rocked the ship, closer this time. Human forces have breached detention-level security, reported a frantic officer. They'll reach the prisoners in minutes. For the first time in his distinguished Conquest career, Commander Nax'Vrell felt something dangerously close to fear. In the detention level, Chief Engineer Eliza Frost sat calmly in her cell, despite the distant sounds of battle echoing through the ship. When the Tarraxian interrogator entered agitated, mandibles clicking rapidly, she merely smiled. "Sounds like my ride's here," she remarked casually. The interrogator slammed a clawed appendage against the force field. Why? Why would your species commit such resources for 3 insignificant individuals? It defies all logic. Eliza leaned forward. That's because you're thinking like a Tarraxian. We're human. We don't measure worth by rank or strategic value. Then by what metric do you determine who deserves rescue? The interrogator demanded. That's the thing, Eliza replied, her smile widening as another explosion rocked the ship. We don't. We come for everyone. On the command deck, Communication Officer Trilzar frantically called for the commander's attention. Sir, I've completed my analysis of human historical rescue operations, he reported, voice strained with urgency. The data is concerning. Nax'Vrell, attempting to coordinate the increasingly desperate defense of his vessel, snarled. Make it quick, officer. Operation Eagle Claw, 1980 CEE, attempted rescue of 52 hostages with their most elite forces. Operation Gothic Serpent, 1993 CE, Battle of Mogadishu, sustained heavy casualties refusing to leave their fallen behind. The Dunkirk Evacuation, 1940 CE, over 300. 000 soldiers rescued when military doctrine would have abandoned them. Trilzar's voice grew more urgent with each example. They have countless such operations throughout their history. This isn't propaganda, Commander, it's their core operating principle. Security Chief Drakmor nodded grimly. The human captives confirmed as much during interrogation. They seemed genuinely confused by our assumption that they would be abandoned. That's absurd, Nax'Vrell insisted, though his conviction was plainly wavering. No species achieves space travel while maintaining such inefficient values. A deafening explosion rattled the command deck as emergency lighting flickered on. Hull breach on decks 5 through 8, shouted an officer. Human boarding parties have broken through our final defensive line. Drakmor's tactical display showed the grim reality, human soldiers methodically securing corridors, disabling rather than killing when possible, all converging with single-minded purpose toward the detention level. They fight differently when rescuing their own, observed Drakmor. More determined, more focused. It's as if each human draws strength from the certainty that others would do the same for them. Commander Nax'Vrell slumped into his command chair, the full weight of his miscalculation finally sinking in. We based our entire conquest strategy on the assumption that all intelligent species prioritize collective survival over individual lives. That they would calculate the cost of rescue against strategic value and choose logically. It appears humans operate under a different calculation entirely, said Vexnar quietly. Another explosion, much closer this time. The command deck doors buckled under concentrated weapons fire. They're here, announced Drakmor with unexpected calm. Your orders, Commander? Nax'Vrell stared at the buckling doors, his mind racing through 15 previous conquests, 15 species that had behaved exactly as Tarraxian doctrine predicted. None had prepared him for humanity. "We have made a terrible miscalculation," he admitted as the doors finally gave way. Human soldiers poured onto the command deck, weapons raised but disciplined. Behind them strode Fleet Admiral Admiral Jackson, flanked by a disheveled but triumphant Eliza Frost and her 2 colleagues. "Commander Nax'Vrell, I presume," said Admiral Jackson, her voice steady and authoritative. "I believe we have some things to discuss." The command deck of the inevitable dominance had never been so quiet. Tarraxian officers stood frozen at their stations, surrounded by human soldiers whose discipline was evident in their steady aim and unwavering focus. Admiral Admiral Jackson and Commander Nax'Vrell faced each other across the tactical display, 2 leaders from civilizations with fundamentally incompatible worldviews. "Your strategy was sound," Jackson acknowledged, breaking the tense silence. "In purely logical terms, we shouldn't have come. The resources expended to rescue 3 people far exceeded their economic or strategic value." Nax'Vrell's mandibles twitched with confusion. "Then why did you come? Your species cannot sustain this approach to warfare. It's inefficient, wasteful." "And yet here we are," replied Jackson calmly, "standing on your command deck." Behind her, Eliza Frost stepped forward. "You asked me during interrogation why humans don't abandon their own. I couldn't explain it then, but maybe now you understand. It's not about efficiency, it's about who we are." Nax'Vrell studied the humans surrounding him, noting their varied appearances yet unified purpose. For the first time in his long career, he found himself genuinely curious about another species' perspective. "Your conquest strategy has a fatal flaw," continued Admiral Jackson. "It assumes all intelligent life thinks like Tarraxians. We don't calculate the worth of our people based on rank or strategic value. We come for everyone from our highest leaders to our newest cadets." She gestured to the rescued engineers. "When you took our people, you didn't weaken us. You gave us a reason to show you exactly who we are." Security Chief Drac Moore spoke up unexpectedly. "Admiral, what happens now? By your tactical advantage, you could destroy this vessel and all aboard." A murmur of apprehension rippled through the Tarraxian crew. Jackson's expression remained steady. "We didn't come to annihilate you. We came for our people. You have 2 options. Leave this system immediately and never threaten humans again, or face complete defeat." She paused. "We prefer the first option." "Mercy?" Nax'Vrell could hardly believe what he was hearing. "After all this, you offer mercy?" "That's another thing you don't understand about humans," said Eliza with a hint of a smile. "We can be your worst enemy or your best ally. Your choice." 30 minutes later, the human fleet formed an escort pattern as the damaged inevitable dominance limped toward the system's edge. The Tarraxian Dominion's first ever retreat burned into its battle records. On the observation deck, Commander Nax'Vrell watched the blue-green planet shrink in the distance, his world fundamentally changed. "Commander," ventured Trilzar cautiously, "the High Command will expect a full report. How do we explain this unprecedented outcome?" Nax'Vrell continued staring at the view screen, his voice unusually reflective. "Tell them we encountered a species that defies our understanding of intelligent life. A species that draws strength from the very behaviors we considered weaknesses." He turned to face his communications officer. "Tell them we encountered humans." As the inevitable dominance disappeared into FTL, Commander Nax'Vrell knew the Tarraxian Conquest doctrine would never be the same again. In the vastness of space, they had finally met a species that had turned loyalty not into a vulnerability, but into their greatest weapon.